Hey folks, Joe Valley here. Welcome back to another episode of the Quiet Life Podcast. Today's guest is Chad Rubin. He's founder of Skubana, founder of a brand on Amazon that's 15 years old, one of the original partners in the Prosper Show, and has a new company called Profasee, .com. It's an AI company that helps with pricing on Amazon, but in a much more detailed and effective way than you might be thinking when you hear about companies like this. They essentially help you predict, or actually Profasee. And I'm going to get this wrong. Chad, if you're listening, I'm doing the best I can because, as I said during the podcast, I'm not an Amazon seller. I just help Amazon sellers sell their business for maximum value. But Profasee, it's really impressive. First, Chad's history and background is really impressive, but it's going to help you, discover and help you predict the perfect price to win the sale every time on Amazon, and maximizing your profitability, looking at minimum prices, maximum prices, your landed cost of goods sold, and predicting pricing to make sure you're maximizing your pricing, whether you've got 2 SKUs or 2,000 SKUs, and that's the key thing here. It's AI based and it's learning, and Chad's team is learning, and they're launching new cohorts, and it's going to be, I think, very much the future of Amazon. So jump in, take a listen. It's Chad Rubin from Skubana and now Profasee.com. Here we go. Chad Rubin, welcome back to the Quiet Life Podcast. How the hell are you?
I'm good. It's been a journey.
Before we hit record, you said it's been a long day, and I said it's been a long decade. I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile. It's just crazy what you have done over the last, decade or more. Not sure how you're keeping it all up. Doing good.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of Wim Hof breath work, a lot of personal work, and enjoying the highs and enjoying the lows simultaneously.
We should have Mark recording this for you then. He loves Wim Hof. He's talked to me about it and gone in depth. He doesn't have the ice bath, but he's taking cold showers every day and all that stuff too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started doing that after the exit of Skubana. I hired a breathwork coach, and he got me into like this holotropic breathing exercise. And so I do that. I try to do that once a week, sometimes twice a week. If I'm feeling strange in my body or if I'm coming out with a cold, I'll whip it out. And it's just an amazing tool to use, and you don't really need anybody else, right? You just go to the app, hit the play button, and you work on your breath.
We could make this all about that and getting into it. I'm meditating for 30 minutes a day now, trying to do more. In fact, I just did a little bit before we recorded, but mine is mostly sleep oriented or lack of sleep oriented. And that's why I'm doing it, going through some CBTI programs. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about you and your background and your history. For those that don't know you, haven't seen you speak or know about Skubana or the other companies that you've partnered in or operated, can you give the folks a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, quick sentence or two. I've been in the e-commerce space now for 15 years. So probably one of the first private label sellers on Amazon in the vacuum filter category. Scaled that business at its height. We were about $11 or $12 million in revenue. My account manager at Amazon became an investor of the software idea I had called Skubana. That was James Thompson, who started the Prosper Show. And I started that with him as well, along with 2 other gentlemen. So we got Skubana, we got Prosper Show, we have an e-commerce business. And then I just launched Profasee, which is a Uber surge pricing software for Amazon brands.
Yeah, again, I'm not sure how you do it. I didn't know that you and James started the Prosper Show together. We've had James on the podcast many times, and obviously you guys sold that and it's still going well. Are either of you still owners in the Prosper Show?
No, James did a brief stint afterwards. I don't want to say brief. I think he was on for another 2 years. But with the sale, I was completely out. Same thing at Skubana. I was completely done and out. I didn't have an earn out or anything after the process was over.
Well, let's talk about Skubana first, because if I'm reading this right, that leading up to the exit and exiting and going through it was wonderful and painful all at the same time. You're not doing the type of breath work and focus on yourself and CEO on yourself and talking to coaches and things of that nature, unless you're trying to get some shit straight in your life, or just sort of tame it down a little bit. Can you talk to us about Skubana and the process of exiting, and what were some of the highs and lows of that?
Of the process of the exit.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, there's a lot. So Skubana, we were around for 7 years. And with COVID, there was an uptick of obviously D2C sales. And we were a beneficiary of that because we supported FBA or FBM, right? Meaning FBA sellers that are prime eligible or people that are picking and packing out of a warehouse. So we were a beneficiary of that process. The business started to grow tremendously during the pandemic. And we were unsure what was going to happen, right, operationally, but we'd start to do extremely well. And an amazing offer came through that seemed like a great fit. And of course, the first question is like, well, is it a real offer?
Was it
Right?
unsolicited?
It was unsolicited.
Okay.
And so I had to bring that to the board, and I was ready to take it right away. And perhaps not everybody was so willing to do that. So just in that conversation, right, there's hair on the process already because we had Brian Lee from Honest Company on our board. I had my business partner on the board, and we had our lead investor on the board. And so everybody had to be in agreement, and we had to align mentally on where our heads were because not everybody was on the same page.
Were your board members also shareholders?
Yes.
And what was the function of the board?
Well, it was to keep us in check as founders, also to get a lot of the experience from Brian Lee. Like Brian Lee started Honest Company, Shoe Dazzle, Art of Sport with Kobe Bryant, and LegalZoom. How can I forget that? And so it was like he was supposed to guide us. He believed in us when nobody believed in us. So he was a seed investor when I first raised money, and I had no notches on the belt, so to speak, which was amazing support from him.
Curious how often you met with the board?
Quarterly, yeah, quarterly meetings. But like if anything was, say, out of balance or out of something, there was an anomaly that came up or something that was a deviation from the norm, I would call on them, and they were ready to hop on a call immediately, which is what you want in a board.
So you are in what position at this point when you got this unsolicited offer that you wanted to accept? Are you CEO of Skubana?
Yep, CEO of Skubana. Really how it all happened, and this is so serendipitous, is when things are going well, right? You're coming up with new ideas on how to grow businesses instead of constantly putting out fires. Skubana was just shy of 50 people. I reached out to a 3PL Central and the CEO, and we just had a nice conversation. And I presented this idea of, hey, your customer's customer is our customer. So you support the 3PLs. The 3PL's customer are the brands. It sounds like there's a great partnership here. Like, what if you can get a spiff and sell our software into the 3PLs for those brands and like make those 3PLs smart 3PLs, which is kind of like ShipBob or ShipMonk, if you've seen that, seen those companies. But they have 3PL Central has a lot of customers using their software as the operating system of 3PLs. So I thought it was a great partnership. I thought it was a great idea. And they had a different idea, which eventually they acquired us in April of 21.
So why did the members of the board initially say no to an offer that you wanted to accept?
It wasn't actually they said no. There was just a very heavy conversation, right? You run a SaaS company for 7 years. And just before we started the conversation offline, we were talking about like it's been a long decade, and in SaaS, I think SaaS is probably one of the most challenging businesses you can run. And I was ready. I was ready to move on. Right? I was like, okay, this is a deal of a lifetime, and I have a lot of friends and family that are invested that have been waiting a very long time to have this outcome, and like, let's go.
Okay. So from time-wise, you closed in April, right? April of 2021. When did that initial offer come in?
I want to say like we started dialoguing around November.
Okay, that's fairly quick.
It was a quick process. I mean, there was a lot of other interested parties at the time, and so we had to make sure that at least I had a fiduciary responsibility to our investors to maximize the outcome. And that's certainly what we did.
Good. And after closing, did you stick around? Were you stuck in the CEO role for a while, help them transition to a new CEO, or what was the situation?
Yeah, I think I had an interesting situation. So we found a company, the plane landed very safely, and April 21 rolls around, and the company did an amazing job at, I would say, filling in any gaps that I had. Uh, and I eventually resigned October of 21. So
Was that the plan originally that you'd stick around for a while, or were you going to be CEO and they were going to
there
keep
was
you
no
on board?
plan. There
No
really
plan.
was no plan. It was literally, it wasn't, I was CEO of Subana. I knew I wasn't going to be CEO forever. And essentially, a lot of my roles started getting divvied up, right? Like someone on the revenue side got the revenue, someone on the customer support side took customer stuff. And so I was transitioned fairly quickly and got to the point where I was like, hey, I'm ready to move on in my life and close this chapter. And I was probably the first person to leave Stubana after the acquisition. So I left in October of 21. We had a great Zoom celebration to move forward with. And then I actually started Profasee in December of 21.
Yeah, see that. I want to talk about that. Tell me a little bit more though of the lack of a plan. Is this something you'd recommend to someone that's in your shoes, a CEO that's selling their company to a fairly large investor, that there's nothing outlined or detailed about you, the owner, and how long you're going to stick around? Or would you, in hindsight, want to have that a little bit more detailed out so you're not wondering what the hell you're going to be doing at this company and how long you're going to be there for?
Yeah. So I think if you go back and you think to yourself, okay, if there is no outline, there is no plan, and even the way agreements are structured when you're processing a deal, you kind of have an understanding of the intent of what the other company want, like where their heart is in the matter,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you can say this about a lot of things: acquisition, dating life, professional relationships. Actions speak louder than words, or a lot of times words speak on the actions that are coming right into the future. And so the fact that perhaps there wasn't a lot of clarity and that I was an at-will employee, right? And I'm trying to like speak gingerly about this, uh, can show sort of like maybe they were able to run stuff without me, right? And move on from the relationship. And so I knew going in, I kind of knew that there was some intent there going into this, like, hey, it's not very clear, and seems like there's a good opportunity here to move on quickly, and it was a deal of a lifetime, and so why not just take it and move forward? I did try working at the company, rolling up my sleeves. It's just I haven't worked for a company in a really long time, and it it wasn't what I was what lit me up. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like a hell yes. I'm either a hell yes or I'm a hell no, and I wasn't a hell yes.
Yeah, it's very difficult, I would imagine, to step into a structured work environment when you've been self-employed for 20 plus years. I can't imagine
Totally.
doing it myself.
It was crazy. I gave it a shot.
Well, I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad it worked out. And I'm trying to understand, Chad, how the hell, and maybe this is focusing on my lack of energy, how the hell you've got the energy to then, 7 months later, jump into developing Profasee. Like,
I'm asking myself that same question.
I always have conversations with founders like yourself, many that have helped with their exit, and we talk about what to do afterwards and what they did right and what they did wrong. And I'm talking about within the first 6 to 12 months. And most of them look back and say, I, I wish I had just taken a year off just to figure out what I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do. Ramon Van Meer is one of them. Great guy. A lot of folks know who Ramon is. We sold SoPod. He's all over Instagram and Twitter right now for, damn it, Ramon, I'm not going to remember the name of the kitty litter company. It's the number 2 kitty litter company in the country now. And he just got into retail through Costco nationwide. He burned himself out, right? Blood pressure, all sorts of health issues,
Yep.
come into play physically and mentally when you don't take proper time off. Do you now looking back saying, I wish I had a little bit more time off to just focus on me? Or did you do a lot of that? You talked about doing some of that yourself anyway, right?
Yeah. So the transition process from close of April to October, it was technically my, call it the Great Reset, where I was like, okay, how am I going to spend this time? Right? I can spend this time going on to something else. I can spend it maybe drinking pina coladas, which got old really soon here in Miami. Or I can spend this time deploying dollars towards self-help and self-improvement, right? Becoming the CEO of me. And
Why did you feel you needed to do that? You're
yeah, I
obviously
mean,
very successful, doing very well. Why do you feel you needed to do that?
first of all, I love self-help. I like read self-help books. I uh, love learning. I love growing. I have just like this unquenchable thirst for improving. And I also had found that during the days of running Stubana, which was I think over like 2,000 days, that I was deploying, but I wasn't harvesting. And so I needed to like harvest my own natural resources and to become just like a software, right? A version, if I'm version 2.0, become version 2.1 of myself. And I wanted to get coaches to do that, kind of like Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan wouldn't be Michael Jordan without Phil Jackson as the coach, if, for those that are understand like 90s basketball. So,
Some of the audience, I'm sure, weren't even born until the 2000s. So
all right. Well, I just knew that I wanted to achieve excellence and I wanted to leverage coaches to do that. And I wanted to use there was no cap towards the dollar amount towards this improvement of myself. So I
right.
hired spiritual coaches. Uh, I hired nutrition coach, boxing coach, which I'm going to have later today. Still have that boxing coach. Not everything stuck, but a DJ coach. Uh, I think I
DJ,
Wim Hof DJ,
DJ coach.
like a DJ, like
Okay.
DJing, spinning.
All right.
All a chess coach, and just like going into like parts of myself that I wasn't exploring during Stubana.
Hmm.
And I did that for quite a long time. And then I came across, I was like keeping a running list of all the mistakes I made at Stubana. And I was also keeping a running list of all these ideas that I had. And I was just putting them in a notepad. And somebody had told me when I exited, just like keep a running list, right? Like things come across your brain, just keep a running list. I had this list and like I presented it to our old investor. I had a list of about 7 ideas. And he was like, dude, this one about dynamic pricing and Uber surge pricing for Amazon brands, like, does this not exist? I'm willing to put in money right now. And I was like, dude, I'm not ready yet. I'm not there. And then he planted that seed, right? And I processed it, and then I became impatient, which in hindsight, by the way, I would probably have taken a little bit more time. But I felt that AI, there was something happening in the AI world, and this is before now ChatGPT has really become prevalent and alive in the business community. And I was like, there's something about AI here that's just a once in a lifetime opportunity to build proprietary AI. And I wanted in on it. And we started building an AI model in December. So we raised money. I raised 2.3 million and started building out the team, coming up with the brand, and really start working on programmatically changing pricing to maximize profit for Amazon sellers and the aggregators without sacrificing your ranking position on Amazon.
You got to know some shit to be able to do that, for sure. That's impressive, both in the fact that you've come up with a concept based upon your experience, you've been able to pull it off, develop it, make it work, and then just another animal altogether, going out and raising capital. Out of all those things, which was the most exciting and most challenging thing for you?
I think we missed one piece is that one of the reasons why Profasee came to be was because I have an e-commerce business, which we've chatted about historically. And this business has been just decimated. And I was looking at the palm trees outside and I was like, wait, I was trying to figure out how do I turn this business around? And the one thing that no lever that not a lot of sellers pull, everyone pulls spend, but nobody pulls pricing. And pricing is the best lever, right? Small levers swing big doors that can generate flow to the bottom line, and nobody's changing price. I started asking the question of why. So, in terms of like what was the best part for me, like I enjoy all the parts, right? Like I love coming up with a brand name. Like if you think of the word prophecy means to predict that something's going to happen with a level of certainty. And so there's a lot of thought around the name of prophecy and predicting price. What's the optimal price to maximize profit with a level of certainty? And it just all flowed together. So I love building. I love creating. I think our website is best in class for a SaaS company. And I mean, I don't love turning businesses around, that's for sure. And I've been kind of stuck doing that even while I'm building a new startup.
Spell prophecy for me for the audience too.
Oh, profit you could see, PROFASEE.com.
So you applied prophecy to your own business that's been struggling, and what's the outcome?
Oh, I mean, we've turned it around. I mean, all of our prices were off. We have 550 SKUs and 1,000 listings on Amazon. And so, and it's not just one thing, right? Pricing was dramatically off. And I do believe in changing pricing based on not only signals that happen in your own listing, but signals that your competitors have as well. And have AI can learn that quicker and more efficiently than a human can. So it's a combination of pricing products that were completely off the mark, along with SKU rationalization, along with making sure everything's prime eligible, figuring out metrics and criteria of what to liquidate based on turns, based on velocity. So I mean, it's a lot of things to turn around this company, and that's why aggregators don't really turn around businesses. They try to buy businesses that are growing, but it's a real mark of excellence when you can turn something around and catch that falling sword, which I've been doing, which I'm surprised about.
But you mentioned you're working with aggregators, and they're using, some of them are using, or one of them's using at least prophecy. So
Yeah.
is that because some of the businesses that bought are not growing, but are shrinking, and prophecy is helping them turn that around?
So I think it's a lot of things that are happening with this transformation into AI in general, to me, is going to change Amazon in a very big way, and I want to be at the forefront of it. And so if you look at even like Thrasio, right? A lot of these aggregators, by the way, are distressed. They're making layoffs, but the one thing that they're not making layoffs around is AI. And these companies need to use data and turn them into decisions to take them to new heights. So leveraging AI, whether it's pricing, whether it's forecasting and demand planning, whether it's spending, right? All of these things they're going to need to leverage so they can actually be better than whatever exists today, which to me is the rise of the algorithmic brand on Amazon. And yeah, so we're working with those companies to be smarter. Now, if you look at Thrasio's site, for example, they're hiring, like they didn't lay anybody off on the AI side of their business or the data science side. And they're working on this simultaneously, right? So they understand that AI is going to be their edge they can get to sniff out any penny of profit that they can.
Well, I got to tell you, with the aggregators that I've worked with, and I've worked with just about all of them over the last 5 years, originally starting with one-on-one commerce, and Thrasio was, I think when they got their first $780 million valuation, we'd sold them 40% of their transactions. The one big mistake that most of them made was, not understanding that you, Chad Rubin, as a founder of a company 15 years ago, have everything invested in it, and you're going to give it everything that you've got. That's you, the founder of the company. They're buying your company, but they lose you, and they hire somebody to, do that job who's on payroll that might have some sort of incentive. And there's no comparison in terms of the passion and the focus and the energy. I've seen them run out of inventory when they've got so much money available to buy the inventory, yet somebody doesn't pull that lever to order inventory on a timely basis. And that impacts, the stability payment or the earnout that they're, guaranteeing or almost guaranteeing if they hit certain numbers to the sellers. How is prophecy going to change that for them when they're able to minimize or get rid of or act more intelligently in this lower to middle level management of the companies?
Yeah, so the sheer size of aggregators, right? Nobody knows what even brands, even founders like me don't know what the optimal price is. So like Amazon shoppers leave behind tons of cues, behaviors, preferences, searches, and it's very manual, arduous. to process that manually. And by the time you actually process what the optimal price is, the market shifted. Everything on Amazon expires within days, sometimes weeks. And so we will do that automatically for you using machine learning. And that learning compounds and gets better over time. So the more data that you feed it, the more it can learn, the more it gets better. And so right now, a lot of aggregators are leaving money on the, so there's two parts of it. One is they're operating businesses, they're leaving money on the table. How do they drive more EBITDA dollars to the bottom line? That's where we help them. The other part of it is before they're making an acquisition, we can back test. If they plug in their Seller Central model, we can back test how much money is being left on the table before the acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
So they can understand
justify yeah.
Exactly, to justify the multiple.
Exactly.
Correct.
I saw something on, I think it might have been Twitter recently, or Facebook, I'm not sure, but somebody had posted, it was an Amazon seller that posted, and you might have seen it, that they, a competitor, just repriced right below them and kept going down and down and down. And they reached out to that competitor, and the competitor said, I can do this all day long, and I'm going to. And that individual, that founder, waited until about 3:00 in the morning, found out where the competitor was, made sure they were asleep, and repriced. And then they automatically, it was an automatic thing, they repriced right below them. So literally they took their main SKU from, let's say $25 down to $5. And then the competitor's algorithm repriced it to $4.99. And then that seller bought them all.
What do you think? Are you referring to, by the way, is this on a reseller page, or is this like two separate listings? Because we're focused, Profasee is focused on Amazon native brands.
These are two
the buy box.
Two separate brands, I believe. They were just
it.
competing against each other. And the one that had the repricer automated was the one that was, let's say the seller felt like he was playing dirty, and he quote unquote taught them a lesson by repricing right below super low, and then bought all the inventory.
I'd love to see the post, but I'll tell you, with Profasee, you put in your boundaries. So you put in your min, your floor price, and your ceiling price. So there's boundaries that we're operating within of how comfortable you're willing to go and how low or high you're willing to go.
Does it take into account ad spend and cost per acquisition and all that stuff too?
For sure. And I think ad spend is another big part of this that I think we can go down this rabbit hole. But we take into account all the fees on Amazon along with ad spend. So if you think about like the equation of ACoS, which is what you spend to what you make, most sellers are only focusing on the what you spend side of the equation, right? They're kind of, everyone's managing to an ACoS, but nobody's ever changing price. And if they are, it's very rare, sometimes maybe once a month. And so we're flipping the equation around where we believe pricing dictates what ad spend is. And over time, you're going to see a lot more functionality and features from us around ad spend. But to me, it's like having peanut butter without the jelly. The two are much better together. And right now, everyone's managing to these, I call them gospel metrics, where it's just they're managing to an irrelevant vanity metric, which is ROAS or ACoS. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And so I'm encouraging people to shift towards, which is my mentality, is what is your profit on ad spend?
It's why we're in business. You can break even doing nothing. So you do need to focus on profit. And most people brag about their revenue numbers, but not their profit numbers or percentages. And so I agree with that 100%.
And I think a lot of sellers, though, don't, like when you're working with an agency or you're working in any of these ad softwares, there is no contribution margin. There's no cost of goods sold. So, and this is a massive fallacy. And so like ROAS to me and to Profasee, and our thesis is that ROAS is only an efficiency metric.
Are you doing landed cost of goods sold when you're working with folks?
Oh yeah.
Good. A lot of folks skip that landed part. So that's good. So, you mentioned something, on your own company, we've got 500 SKUs. Aggregators historically have never wanted to buy a company with 500 SKUs. They just want to look at 3, 4, 5 SKUs because it's manageable, and, we've sold $1 billion in transactions over the last 15 years. And we're finding that to be a consistent message that the more SKUs there are, the more complicated it is. It's hard to have an inventory aging report. It's hard to make all the adjustments so you can be as profitable as possible. Is Profasee going to take care of this and change the number of SKUs people are going to be willing to carry?
No, I really think less is more. Like I'm going through my own SKU rationalization process with my e-commerce business. And so like we can help people manage pricing at scale, whether you have 10 SKUs, whether you have 100 SKUs, whether you have 1,000 SKUs. Like we're not going to tell people whether they need to SKU rationalize or not, but I do think that narrowing in on the 80-20, if 80% of your profits come from 20% of the SKUs, that's where I'm focusing my energy. And that's certainly where Profasee like to focus its energy because we're not in the business of trying to revive a SKU, right? We're in the business of how do we harvest more money from that SKU without affecting the discoverability on Amazon.
So I saw you post something recently on LinkedIn about uh, it seemed like you were offloading SKUs. Was it because you're understanding now that there are a certain number of SKUs that you're not profitable on or not profitable enough, and you're trying to narrow your focus on those that are more profitable?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's carrying costs. I mean, just my next call coming up is my fulfillment center, who I've been with for 12 years, was acquired I think about 7 months ago, and they are 2xing their fees on me. So there's no free lunch. And so I need to focus on like what is going to maximize this business and the opportunity for us. And so the other challenge in my business, which we didn't talk about, is the fact that we've been copied throughout the years, right? And so we've got Chinese sellers coming in, factories that are going factory direct from China direct onto Amazon, and we can't compete on certain prices. And we haven't innovated enough in the past 7 years to move into new product categories and new products that haven't been commoditized over time. So it's a lot of factors that have allowed me. And by the way, it turns out that LinkedIn post that you're referencing, I found so many liquidators. It was like LinkedIn's a better selling channel than eBay is.
Well, you're finding
Just,
the right people for sure.
yeah, exactly.
Um, the fulfillment center, 2xing your fees after 7 years, it's just been purchased, as you said. Do you think they're doing that to everyone, or they're just doing it to Chad Rubin because you've got 500 SKUs and a lot of it just takes up space in the warehouse?
I do think that they are optimizing. So I think if you look at what's happening across e-commerce in general, why everyone's in such a struggle is that there's inflation across the board, right? Raw materials, services, in PPC inflation, warehouse inflation. And I do think that there's probably adjustments of pricing that's happening to other people simultaneously. And I think that they're looking at my SKU count and the long tail of the SKUs that I have and saying, hey, this guy hasn't received a proper increase in a very long time. I've had a sweetheart deal because I've sent this company a lot of business. And with the acquisition, there's no more personal relationship. It's just a transactional approach. And so they want to calibrate the pricing.
Okay. Can't fault them for that. I'm looking at
Yeah,
your site now, profasee.com. Good looking site, as you said.
thank you.
You've got sort of like a ticker tape going across the bottom. Very cool. Tell us about that and what it's showing.
Are you talking about the brands?
Yeah, I'm seeing ASINs and I'm seeing competitor number two. And
Oh, I think you're on
it,
how it works. Maybe you're on how it works page.
I am, exactly.
Oh, okay. So the reason why pricing is so hard is that most of the softwares that exist today aren't for private label, or if they are trying to do private label, they're based on velocity and they don't account for all the other things that are happening in the marketplace, right? So when you make a decision on Amazon, it's not just a decision that affects you, but it affects your competitors and it affects Amazon as well. So this makes it very challenging. And instead, we actually pull in signals from Amazon. So not just your BSR, your price, your reviews, the quantity of reviews, the recency of reviews, inventory position, but we also pull in your competitors' signals. And all this flows into a model. And in our model, we process its information and the model creates its own if-then statements and nodes of if-then statements to maximize the outcome that we're trying to achieve, which in this case is maximizing profit without hurting your position on Amazon, your organic rank. So the reason why there's a ticker tape going across is showing like, hey, we're accounting for other ASINs and your competitor's price and making adjustments in real time to maximize your profit.
What if I use Profasee for my brand, and my biggest competitor uses it as well.
So that would be a champagne problem. Now, I can't tell you how the AI would react, but there's something to be said around two people having us having information as a third party fiduciary responsibility to help raise profit of the two businesses that we're working for. Do you follow where I'm going with that
I
comment?
do. I do.
Okay.
So we're probably going to see.
You're muted, Joe.
Sorry, I leaned onto my keyboard, folks, and I muted myself. I just said the most intelligent thing I've ever said. I'll just say something else for now, though. We're going to see profits go up on both. Prices are going to go up. The profits are going to skyrocket on both. Instead of fighting each other, they're positioning themselves to be more profitable. Both more profitable, I would imagine. Yeah.
Totally.
Isn't that price fixing?
Uh, well, essentially, it's AI is making decisions to optimize the outcome. So I'm going to refrain from using that terminology.
Okay.
But but essentially, the other thing is that when you come onto Profasee, you put in your min and your max price. So it could be that two of these sellers have different min and max prices. And what we've seen time and time again is that it's not always at the lowest price wins on Amazon, and it's not always at the highest price wins either. There is a magic and there is a secret sauce, right? There's conversion rate, there's sessions, there's a lot that's happening on your listing that'll dictate what the optimal price should be.
And it's all above my head because I'm not an Amazon seller. I've just helped hundreds of Amazon sellers exit over the years. So, what is going to be the first step for an Amazon seller that goes to Profasee and wants to sort of get started? It says request to access here on the site, but what's the process? What's the onboarding process like? How much work and time is involved, and how quickly do you generally see people get some positive results?
Sure. So look, there's a lot of learnings that have happened because we went live with our first clients in July, and then we learned from them and then improved our tech. And now we're actually into our second cohort right now. So this isn't like an off-the-shelf model that we're using, right? This is a real model that we've built that's proprietary. And so the first thing that we've noticed from cohort 1 to cohort 2 is that a lot of brands don't change pricing. So what does that mean? It's kind of like going on Facebook, and Facebook doesn't know what ad to give you because there's no likes, there's no posts, there's no dwell time, you have no connections. So the algorithm has nothing to bite on. So our algorithm, similar to that, doesn't have anything to bite on if there's no price changes, right? It doesn't know how the market reacts, how your competition reacts, how Amazon reacts. So now our AI for the first month, we call it the hyper learning phase. We've trademarked that. And the first month is just hyper learning where we oscillate and change pricing for you dynamically on a net neutral profit impact basis, where it's learning and that learning is then injected into the model in the following months. So that's a big improvement that we've made. Another improvement is that our AI isn't hands off the wheel, meaning we are supervising our AI. So our data science team every day is looking at every single SKU that you have to make sure that there's nothing funny going on and there's no anomalies that exist, to make sure that we're ensuring that we're going to be delivering the profits that we expect. And so on average, you're looking at 10 to 12% increase of profits. But like if you look at a case study that's on our page right now, we had a 30% increase in profit. So the beautiful thing about AI, right, it's faster than us, it's cheaper than us, it works harder than we do, and it makes fewer mistakes. And over time, that's to become a moat and a sustained competitive advantage that compounds for the sellers that come on Profasee.
It sounds pretty positive, right? And no any other way to slice it except that it seems like people should be looking at it and paying attention to it. And I've been looking at AI and the metaverse and all this stuff as well, and I do believe it is the future. In terms of day-to-day management of somebody that, let's say they've got somebody that manages their brands for them, somebody in-house, how's this going to change that role, and how active will they be in Profasee after the first 30 to 60 days?
So in the first 30 days, the model is learning, right? It's observing, it's experimenting, and it's learning independently of us.
Right.
And then,
but the human at the brand let's call it Thrasio, the human at Thrasio that is managing the brands, are they doing something different than they normally do once they've subscribed?
So the only thing that they're doing is they give us their min and max, they give us their landed cost. We are giving them monthly business performance calls to share our learnings and to share insights and to share how much money we've made them. If there's a prime deal or some sort of lightning deal that they want to run, right, we need to know that in advance. So there is a tight conversation that's happening with us and the brand to make sure that we know what are deals that are being run in advance or promotions that they want to run. But outside of that, our focus is helping them maximize profits and get insights that they never had before.
So what are they going to do? If Profasee is doing all of this, what are they going to do as the brand owner?
Well, we're doing price. They might change listings. They might be doing listing research. But like over time, right? I mean, you can see it with ChatGPT. AI is going to be a massive supplement and in some cases replacement of specific functions of jobs. But you can say that about SaaS in general, right? Like Stubana, we did inventory management, order management. Now imagine if somebody was like counting how many you had in the warehouse and then counting how many was in the bin and then putting that into Amazon Seller Central and then having to put that then into other channels as well so that all the inventory levels are synchronized. Like that probably was somebody's role, which it was when we first started Stubana, which made it much more efficient. So I think that this has been happening in SaaS, but I think AI is taking it to a whole nother level because AI is now thinking for you. It's not just doing the efficiency work, it's actually doing the thinking and the decisioning based on insights. And I think that's the big difference in this new world.
Will it take into account, the new ad copy, the split testing, things of that nature, when things change outside of pricing? Will it take into account these changes as well?
So yes, and it's going to come with my next capital raise, but I can assure you that I believe that the future is going to be pricing and PPC together. So long are the days of just managing to spend and software is taking a percentage of ad spend and managing to a target ACOS or a goal ACOS, which is irrelevant because if your ACOS goes up 5% and you're making more profit dollars, let's just say your price goes up 20% and your ACOS goes up 20%, and you double your EBITDA by 50% or increase your EBITDA by 50%, like it doesn't matter what your ACOS is. So I think you're going to start seeing more of that for me if and when we deliver on our cohort 2 results, which I'm very optimistic about, and we raise capital. This is really where we're focusing our time and energy.
What's the benefit to somebody jumping in with Profasee now as a client versus waiting 3, 6, 9, 12 months? Any?
First of all, like the knowledge and information that the model learns is learning now versus a month from now. 2 is we're already showing results from our first cohort. 3 is you're getting legacy pricing. And I think there also is something to be said about Amazon when you're a first adopter, right? Like when you are too late to the party, then you have no edge. So like when the market zigs and we're zagging, you're missing out on the zagging piece.
I agree with all of them. I think the basic fact that you're going to be more profitable along the way is worth it as well. It's all good. Chad, I know that you have a call coming up with your fulfillment center and trying to get them not to 2x your fees. So wrapping it up, how do folks learn about Profasee? How do they get in touch with you and so on and so forth?
So yeah, my personal email is chad@profasee.com. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to post insightful thoughts there, Twitter as well. And just really happy to support the community. I really want to leave the Amazon ecosystem and the e-commerce ecosystem better than how I found it. And I think I'm doing just that. So thank you for having me on.
My pleasure, folks. It's PROF as in Frank, ASEE.com, Profasee.com. We'll put that in the show links as well. Chad, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming back on the Quiet Life podcast. Look forward to having you on again someday in the future.
Thank you, Joe.
you.